Hi YouTube, it's Dale from Beauty in the Empty Nest, and today I'm going to give you a review and a demonstration of this Smashbox step-by-step contour kit. So if you want to see what I think and watch me apply it, keep watching. Okay, so this is the Smashbox step-by-step contour kit, which, as one of the sales associates at Sephora described as contour for dummies. Maybe that's not most flattering way, but it probably is a good description. It comes in two different color tones. One's light medium and one is medium deep, I think is what it was referenced to. And the idea here is, and I will open it up, that it contains both a contour, bronzer, and highlighter. All matte shades. So these are the shades that are included. So this is going to be your contour, the bronzer, and then the highlighting powder. It has a very nice little mirror, and then it also has this little step-by-step how-to contour kit. It also comes with a little flyer too that gives you more specific directions based on the shape of your face. I still lend to the idea that everyone just needs to get to know your face, get to know the facial structures, get to know what you like best to emphasize or minimize or recede, as they also like to say. So once you have a good idea of that, then you can really start playing around with contour and highlighting to bring out and emphasize the areas that you want and to recede those areas that you want to give that little bit of a shading to. And then the bronzing is that step that we do just to kind of bring, maybe, at least in my case, to get away from that foundation face look and to give your skin, like they like to say, warmth to it. But I always think back to days before I ever used bronzer, and I look back at like photos, or I think back then, and I just felt like foundation face that was a flat kind of color. I don't mean matte. It was that kind of flat, non-dimensional face, which was, especially if you wore pretty full coverage, which I did because I had so much acne, that the only things you saw were dimension, where you could actually see the acne ripples. But anyway, that's the idea that I take from using bronzer. So this kit has all in it, which I really do like when everything all is in one kind of palette. However, I only really like it and appreciate it when you use all of it. For example, I love the Kat Von D Shade and Light Contour Palette. However, there are really only two colors in it that I use, and I've hit pan on that now, and the rest is just kind of, ugh. I'm actually giving it to a friend who likes the colors, fortunately, that I didn't like. So that's where I kind of go with that. If you're a makeup artist, obviously, or you do a lot of people's makeup and you work in different skin tones, something like that is fantastic. Or if you're just trying to figure out what colors you like, something like that is fantastic. But once you kind of know, then I like them all to be in the same palette. Now, or you end up with individual pieces, and then you can always go the step of depotting them, putting them in a Z palette. That's getting way outside the realm of the review that I wanted to do today on this Smashbox step-by-step contour palette. Now, first thing, I love the packaging of it. It's very small, it's slim, but it still feels good. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels like it could be stashed away for traveling, which is ideal. Also, look how small that is. Here's my hand. I mean, it's really nice, and yet when you open it up, it's got a pretty decent mirror. Not a great size, but I use something like this, or I have another travel mirror that I bring with me with a light on it for when I'm traveling, and when I'm at home, I have my makeup mirror in front of me. So I very rarely ever use a mirror that's not compact unless it's something that I have in my purse I'm looking at. But I personally wouldn't bring this with me in my purse. So packaging I really liked. On the back it even gives you a quick review of what the colors are, the contour, the bronzer, and then the highlight, which after you kind of look at them you can kind of see the differences here with the idea that the contour has more of that ashier or grayish tone. I guess that would be a more correct way to say it. So it's building shadows. The bronzer has more of the colors to bring the warmth or a little more lifelike look to your skin. And then the highlighter is want them to be the part that is not striking color, but does give a little bit of lightness that brings that brightness there. So this palette is all matte, so you're also going to want to think about whether you like matte colors or not, for a contour, you are probably always, I mean, I can't think of an exception, always going to want a matte contour. However, there's always someone who's found something really great to do with a non-matte contour, so I don't want to say all the time. In most cases, for people like me who are not extreme makeup artists at all and just love makeup and love to play with makeup, it's always going to be a matte kind of color. I wouldn't step off into that range too much myself because I really wouldn't know what I was doing. So probably a little bit more background than you need to know. So here's the three colors. This one is the light medium. And so as you can see, really kind of right in the middle of the continuum of colors for that skin tone range. Exactly where it fits into when the sales associate was saying contour for dummies. It just isn't as flattering thinking that I got up a contour palette for a dummy, but in many respects, I'm still learning. I think everyone is always still learning and discovering because there's always so many new products coming out there, or your skin changes. Maybe the facial structure changes because whether or not you gain weight or lose weight or any of those kind of things that we all go through, or just that your aging and things have changed a little bit. Have you found that at all? So we're continually probably always trying to find something that works even better or modifying a little bit. There's always those few holy grails that are really ever hard to ever replace, but that's why I'm always seeking these out. So let's kind of dig into this a little bit. I right now have just my foundation and my eye makeup on and lipstick and my eyebrows done, and I'm going to go through applying it. I'm hoping that the lighting is good enough that you can pick this up in here. I'm still playing with lighting. My primary light source still is daylight, and then I'm supplementing a little bit. So I'm hoping this really picks up that a little bit. Okay, so typically I start always with my contour. And then I build upon it my bronzer. And then I add in any kind of blush highlighting mixture. And those I go back and forth, whether I highlight or... Now, this highlight here is not the same as I would use as like a sparkly kind of glittery highlight. This is truly going to be one that I'm just going to strategically place different places. So let me start with it, and I'll talk about the product as I am applying it. So, starting right here with the contour. Oh, the kit also comes with this little brush like this, okay? Let me put it next to, all right, here is the e.l.f. complexion brush. So you can see the size difference. I'll put another one that's pretty common next to it. Here is the e.l.f. stippling brush. So it's rather small. It's actually rather cute though, and it fits nicely alongside the palette. However, I found that the bristles really, I'm not really impressed with it. So what I'm going to do, on one side I will use this for my contour, and then I'm going to use the brush that I actually like better for my contour. Okay, but I want you to be able to see this in action because it is nice, especially when you're first putting on your contour, but I feel like it's just not what I want for me for when I blend out anything. Okay, so starting off, I'm going to tap up. There is fallout. Have you found any palettes these days that really don't have much fallout? So put some on the brush, tap it off. I'm sure you didn't capture that, but you can see the air. Then a little more, tap it off there. So you can see there's that on the brush. Okay, I'm gonna pick up my little mirror there. So I'm not being rude by not watching you, looking at you right now. Hopefully you don't take it that way. All right, so I typically know where my face is. Instead of doing that kind of stuff, I typically like to look at my face and actually feel where my bone is. And sometimes you can already, if you turn it the right direction, you can see where that indentation is. Some of us may have more of it or less of it depending on our facial structure. So if I turn in the right direction, I can usually get a good view of that. And what I start with, because I have the product, I just applied the product here, I'm going to start with it very up, close to my ear line here and come forward. Okay? So I'm going to start right there, placing it. Remember, this is my contour. And I first like to place it and then go back and buff it out a little bit. So there's my contour. That's about where I usually stop, where I stop seeing the actual indentation in my face. Now for some people, you might want to bring it further. For some people, you might want to stop. The general rule that you hear the most often is you stop at the outside of your eye. So right here, which kind of is in line with where I stop, but I try and use my face as my guideline for where I'm gonna apply my contour. I think that's where the individuality with it all comes back in, where you just have to do lots of trial and error and playing around with different things and different products and different brushes. Because a different brush you might do a little differently too, because it disperses the product differently. So I've applied this right here. Now I'm going to go back a little bit. Hopefully you can see. Now it's not quite as much as I want, so I'm going to go back in. A little more there. And you see I move the brush a little bit, and that's where this brush, for the contour especially, what I find is that when you try to kind of disperse it, it's too big of a brush for that for me. I like my contour to be more specific in an area. It's not bronzer, it's contour. And when you look at natural faces and the shading that's produced there, it's diffused, but it's in a very minimal area. So I like to try and mimic that. At least on my face, that's what I've noticed. So I'm trying to go back in here. And here's number one problem. Do you see how it really, this brush, it placed it, okay. But now when I start trying to make it disperse a little bit, it's getting really kind of a little muddy. The powder works really nicely. I think the color actually is pretty decent too. However, it just got really a little bit too muddy looking for me. So I'm going to work on this a little bit, and now I'm going to pull up another brush which I think will work a little bit better for actually kind of mixing it a little bit. This is one of the ones that actually, you can see the size difference here between these two brushes. So this brush that I like to use is the Morphe M330. I think it's actually supposed to be like a blending brush. But I'm going to go back in with this. I'm going to try and clean this up as best I can. Okay. Now, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the other side, but I'm just going to use this Morphe brush. Same thing, I have to pick up product, quite a bit comes off. Now, the same thing I've done before. I'm going to feel my own face, look for where that indentation is. I like to try and turn that way so I see the indentation. And then I follow. And you see how that applied that already so much nicer? That was just, what, like 3 sweeps maybe? Left it a little bit an easier way to be able to work with it. So now I'm just going to go back in with it. I'm not going to need to apply any more product. I'm just going to blend it here a little bit. But I want to say blend it in a confined area too. I don't want to get like bronzer. I don't want to get it too mushy. I'm just making that shadow there. But I also try and avoid too much of a distinct line. And I'll show you how some of that, you can make the distinct line if you want it, but if you don't want it, this is your place to be able to do that. But you don't do that until you know the brush. Like, I feel pretty confident now, there's probably not much product left on the brush now, so now I can actually blend down just a little bit. Or else you're just blending in the same area, slightly bring it up, slightly bring it down. Now I look forward. You can see the differences there. This side and this side kind of spread out. Okay, now, get the hair back here. Now, I am not a nose contour person at all. I mean, I'm sure I could benefit from contouring my nose, but it's not something I'm ever going to do on a daily basis. And I really feel like things you do more often on a daily basis, you get better at doing and quicker at doing. And for me, the few times that I would spend time contouring my nose, I'd probably mess up so many times, and it's so hard to correct something like that. But if you wanted to, that's why this brush is also really, really nice. So typically, if you were going to contour, if I was going to contour, I would bring it through my nose down this way and a little bit under my nose, okay? Now, one other area I do like to contour a little bit, I'm going to take a little bit more brush right under my lip. This is a little tough to do right this minute because I have lip gloss on already. I put a little bit under my lip. And then, if you want to, just to get rid of some extra product, you can start placing this where I would typically place any type of a bronzer. Now I'm going to go back with bronzer into those areas. But it's a nice way to kind of get rid of any extra product on there. Now, typically I would go in for my bronzer, and then I would apply brush and any other kind of sparkly highlighter. However, there's an extra step that you can also do in here, and that is the lighter highlight. This highlight does not work very well on me. I'm going to apply it 2 places just so you can see it on my skin, but I'm not going to apply it under in my eye area up here at all. It gets so cakey and splotchy on me. I cannot get in, and it gets crepey looking, and it's just awful. And as I said before, when you start applying stuff, there's no way to fix that and go back for that. So as much as I have tried many different ways, I've even tried applying the powder with the Beauty Blender, thinking that it does not work. So the light color I cannot do anywhere around this area. However, if you want to go back in under these lines here to clean up, you can. You can either do that before or after your bronzer, whichever you prefer, whichever your order is there. So I'm now going to go in, and to work with that, I'm going to use this little brush that I have no idea what the name of it is. It's worn out, but you can kind of see I'll put it next to, just for size comparison, next to the previous brush. So here was the Smashbox one that comes with this. So I'm going to pick up just a little bit of the highlighter, and what I'm going to do is just contour underneath here a little bit. Sorry, highlight a little bit, and this just cleans up this line a little bit. What I find though is that this color is not that great of a match for me. So once I start putting it like here, I realize that I have to kind of start putting it a couple other places and blending it out. The highlight powder in here just did not work for me very well. So color wise, and also just the fact that it did not sit well on my under eye area. Now if you're younger, if you do not have the lines as I have under your eyes, you might not have any trouble with that, but it did not work for me. So I'm just going to clean it up a little bit underneath there. And then what I found, just because that color is kind of different, is then I do have to kind of clean up a few areas right around here, keeping very much away from my eye area. So up here, and typical other area that you would kind of highlight is up in this area. Again, that's going to be so different depending on your face, your shape of your face, and what you like to do and bring out in your face. Trial and error is sometimes, I think, one of the best things for that too. So just do that, continue there. And I also kind of like, I've already done my eye makeup, but I can put it along the outer edges here as long as it's not spelling. If it gets down into here, oh my gosh, it's just awful for me. Okay, I'm going to put one last little thing here on the top of my nose. Okay, so hopefully you can see. To me, it's not a striking difference, but if you like that crispness in your lines, you might enjoy that. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the bronzer, which is that color right there. And to apply that now with, I'm going to use the e.l.f. complexion brush, which I really like for bronzer. It just has that right, I don't know, the right shape, because you can do it. It's not, this review is not about brushes, but I really do like this one for that. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit in here, tap it off. Now for my bronzer, I typically do a very light swatch on top of the contour, and then outside some of the areas of the perimeter of my face, okay? So just as I've done before, I'm going to start here. I'm going to start the most product on the brush up in an area that's easy to blend, and that also then if you put too much in there, it's not going to be a disaster, as opposed to if you put too much in the right middle there. So now I'm just going to apply that very lightly there. Same thing on this side. Okay, trying to break up some of that, give my face a little more dimension so I'm not just contouring. And now I'm going to start placing it strategically a couple other places. For example, my upper forehead area here. Now I mainly need it on the inside part of here. My face is very narrow right here, so I will do a very light little bit by my hairline, but I don't want to bring in that any more than it already does on its own. However, I can bring in right here on my forehead, because I have a long forehead, which is covered when I wear bangs, but if my hair was longer, when it was longer, I used to pull my hair back quite often, and I really needed to kind of add some little dimension there. So now I'm also going to put a little bit under here, under my chin. And what I found for myself is I need to kind of emphasize here a little bit, and then just a tiny bit, I have a very pointy chin, underneath my chin, right there. So this is, again, think of bronzer. The way I like to think of bronzer is that it's just giving your skin just a little more oomph to it. Like a little more, I wouldn't say necessarily healthy, but it takes away just that foundation face, and it helps soften the top of your contour. So right there, on top there. Okay? So I'm not sure how much the camera is picking up of this, but it's kind of added just a little bit more. Oh, I hate to use the health and vitality to your skin, but it does kind of add that little, so you're not a flat foundation face. Okay. So now I typically would apply some blush, so let me just go ahead and put some blush on. Today I'm going to use one that I always forget about because it's a small container and it kind of like hides, but I love the little container. It reminds me so much of NARS. It's just e.l.f. and it's, I think, a modern mauve. So this is the color. It's a little chalky, but I do like the color of it. I'm going to use the Real Technique stippling brush, which seems to work well with those kind of more chalky kind of blushes or powders. So I have some on there. Okay. I'm just going to add it kind of on top of where I put my bronzer. Well, now typically I would add just a little bit of a highlighter in more of a sparkly kind of color, and I typically would just put it up through this section. I used to bring it down here more, and then I realized it just was not working well with my skin to be able to do that. So I typically now just keep it to this upper area here. But for today, I'm going to keep it a little bit more natural so that you can see these colors as they are. So my last step that I always then do after applying that and before putting on any kind of a shimmery highlighter is take this e.l.f. kabuki kind of brush and just kind of use it. There's nothing on it to kind of make sure that everything is blended out nicely. Now, one thing to make sure, I've learned from error, do not go like this around your cheek area because you will start pulling down colors. Always be lifting up this way because that's the direction you typically want the eye and the look to go. If you start going around this way because it's a brush, you start thinking, oh, brushing, you're going to make a mess of kind of all that. And that's where you tend to get some of the muddiness. I've made that mistake so many times. But I do like things to be a little bit softer. So I go back over. Okay, so now this is a step typically where I would spray some kind of a setting spray or a finishing spray on my face because I find that that really does help everything mesh together. And I use any kind of setting spray, whether it is the Smashbox Primer Water or a MAC Fix Plus, for several stages throughout my makeup. But I find that this last one is also really critical. Sometimes at this point too, I just use my Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray, depending on what I feel like is going to be going on throughout the day and how long my makeup has to last and the combination of everything else. So typically I would apply that. But right now I want to really just focus on what do I think about these powders. Well, I think you got some of the gist of what I've been thinking through here. The contour color is really nice. I find that it goes on well, it blends well, it does the right kind of shading kind of look. I'm hoping you can pick it up. It was kind of hard for me to be putting on makeup here in this mirror, so I'm hoping I applied it well enough that it looks good and you can kind of see that color range of it. So contour powder I think really does work, and I feel like it would work very well on a pretty good range of skin colors. So I'm on board with that one. I think it applied well, it blended well, there's fallout, kickoff. You know, I've really yet to find any that don't give you very much of that. So to me, that's not a negative. Just tap off your brush before you apply. The bronzer. To me, the bronzer is nothing special, unfortunately. I have two others that I like a lot better. You might not be surprised when I pull out my first one, and that is Hourglass, and this is the Radiant Bronze Light. So this is what it looks like with the ambient lighting powders in there. I love this powder. Absolutely love this powder. It goes on so nicely. It's very hard to overdo it, except you will then get maybe a little extra glow if you want. It's not sparkly shiny, but you will kind of get a little bit of an extra glow if you over apply. But in most cases that's kind of worked out okay. So here is a swatch of the Hourglass. And what I'm going to add on here now is a swatch also. Okay, so this right here is the Smashbox and this is the Hourglass. These very much differ in blendability, I feel like. The Hourglass one just blends out beautifully. The Smashbox one, you saw me kind of putting it on there. It's not great blending. It does blend, but it's not great. But there's something about the Hourglass one that I just adore. Absolutely adore. So that's one of my other favorites. Now, if I want a matte, because this is now we're comparing a matte to a more shimmery bronzer. If I want a matte bronzer, my other favorite is the Sephora. This is the micro-finished Sephora powder in Deep. So here's this color here. Let me put that as a swatch right next to the others. Okay, so that is the Sephora micro-finish in Deep, Hourglass, and Smashbox. So those two colors there. And let's see how good I can be. Next to those. Next to those. So this is truly a very matte bronzer. It blends nicely. You have to be a little more careful because it's very easy to go overboard on this one, but it does have a really nice color. The thing I also like about this is I've then followed up and used this also for eyeshadow. So if you like that bronzer eyeshadow being the same kind of color, it's really a nice look, and sometimes all the eyeshadow that you need. So I really do like this. Now, as far as the highlighting powder, right here, you've already kind of gotten a gist, I think, of what I think of the highlighting powder. It does not work for me, not for all the areas that you might want to use it. I felt like it was too chalky and a little bit too cakey for my skin needs. On younger skin, on oily skin, it may be absolutely fine, but it doesn't really work for me. So what do I like better? Marc Jacobs, the filter. And what a real bonus for this is, here is the Marc Jacobs contour and highlighter. These two are fantastic. This contour is wonderful. So you can see the colors there. I'm going to do a swatch difference then. I'll put both the contour color and the highlighter on my hand so you can see them. Okay, so here are some color swatches. This side has the Marc Jacobs. So this is the Marc Jacobs contour, and this is the Marc Jacobs highlighter. This is the Smashbox contour and the Smashbox highlighter. And you can see the color differences there. So, and just to reiterate, this is the Marc Jacobs filter in 20. There are 3 different color options, I believe, in the Marc Jacobs palette. These work beautifully for me. I very much like them. They blend out, they're creamy, they're wonderful. I was not unhappy with the contour from the Smashbox, but the rest of the palette didn't do anything for me. And this is $45. This is, I think, $49. You get much more of the 2 products that I really like. And because for me, I didn't like this bronzer, I have other bronzers I like, this really ends up being less product for $4 less. But this one, I like both of these products very, very well. And I did a review on these and I will link it down below, but I liked both of these products, and look at how much more you get. So I think you're getting an idea of how I'm feeling about the Smashbox. Yes, it is good for starting out contouring if the colors work for you. I love the container. I really was happy with the contour. The bronzer was okay. Definitely did not like the highlighting powder in here, or the highlight powder in here. So definitely worth trying and sampling. And if you don't have the dryness and the lines under your eyes, maybe this color will work a little bit, the highlighting color will work a little bit better for you. It just didn't really work for me. The brush that comes with it is nothing special. Certainly it's cute, but to buy it just for the brush, So no, I mean, it just didn't sell it for me. So I think it's a great concept. I like when they're all just there, but I still go back to the fact that I want to know that I use all the colors, or at least the majority of the colors in the palette to make it worthwhile. So not my top recommendation, but if you are starting out with contouring, it might not be a bad place to start out. So unfortunately, not really my favorite, but hopefully I gave you some other options. If you have similar coloring, similar skin context, I hopefully gave you some other options to think about or consider. So something to look at, maybe go sample test out. If you're in a store like a Sephora where you can sample and test it out. If it doesn't work for you, I do highly recommend some of these other options though to look at. So I hope this was helpful for you. I wish I was delivering better news. It's always great to be able to share and say, this is the best product ever. You've got to go try this. Unfortunately, I can't endorse this that way, but I hope that it has given you some ideas to think about. And I highly recommend that you still test it out for yourself, but I wouldn't be rushing out there to be able to go do that. And if it doesn't work, check out some of the other ones I recommended and just see if any of those work for you. So until next time, if you enjoyed this video, even though maybe it wasn't delivering great news, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe so that whenever I upload a video, it's right there waiting for you. So until next time, goodbye YouTube.